Welcome to Against Social Justice, Ep.05, Social Justice and Meaning in Life. The point of this lecture series so far has been to criticize social justice ideas while suggesting some modest strategies for opposing them. This presentation will go a little deeper into philosophy, psychology, and religion in order to begin to understand why the social justice advocates find the movement so attractive and worthy of their time and energy. As normal, empathetic fellow humans, we owe it to ourselves to understand their position and to see if there is something redeemable in it. Perhaps there is a higher level synthesis of ideas our troubled society could be moving toward. Perhaps there is something we can compromise upon. So rather than dismissing it, we must accept that social justice, as it is currently constituted, functions as what it appears to be, a source of meaning in life for its advocates. This is not to grant that it is either a good source or sustainable source of meaning, but it explains why it motivates so much of the energies. Now, this is hard for a lot of people who already have a more traditional source of meaning in their lives to accept, much less understand. Yet any cursory glance at America in particular and Western culture in general should include the large swaths of the population for whom traditional sources of meaning are, well, meaningless. This didn't happen overnight while we weren't looking. It only seems that way because of how much it has ramped up since 2013. For a 53-hour free course on this, I would recommend John Vervaeke's The Meaning Crisis on YouTube. Let me boil it down comically, to this. Since about 1400, Western civilization has lost one formerly solid source of meaning-making after another through a variety of circumstances, and we now teeter on the edge of nihilism. It turns out that a lack of something so abstract such as meaning has real-world consequences. So perhaps we can at least agree on some trends. Drug use and self-abuse is up. Suicide is up. Divorce, crime, incarceration, obesity, other health problems, up. Attention spans are down. Church attendance is down. Trust in social institutions, down. Culture and art have descended into shit in order to properly respond to all of this. Or perhaps they help drive the lack of meaning as well. So nowhere are these trends more evident than with the young. So rather than playing the get off my lawn, darn kids game here, let me just take part of the responsibility. It is the boomers and Gen Xers who failed to pass on the values and meaning structures to millennials and Gen Zers, and shame on us. We cannot in good conscience blame the young for any sense of nihilism. It should not be surprising that the young have grabbed the latest trend of philosophy and academic scholarship, such as it is, in order to find a way to engage with the world. Something was going to rush into the cultural vacuum in the years after the end of the Cold War, and those of you who bet there might be a sober return to some of the values that have sustained people for millennia were sadly mistaken. I am arguing, however, that we have the hindsight now to view social justice as a plausible outcome, via distortion, of course, of two things nearly everyone can relate to. One, Enlightenment philosophy, and two, religion. The underlying philosophical idea for both religion and Enlightenment philosophy that I will be calling attention to is egalitarianism, or simply put, equality. The distortion aspect of equality is called radical egalitarianism, and I'll get to that later. That all men were created equal, or at least more or less in some conception, was one of the founding ideas for the United States of America. Pushing this Enlightenment idea further, or to its logical or natural end, seems like a worthy cause that is perfectly in line with the American project. In fact, it is usually offered as the first and most obvious defense of social justice ideas when they do bother to defend themselves, which is almost never, as they prefer to appear self-evidently true in every way. So, no, America's founding fathers were not in a position to implement this in its full potential. And yes, much progress has been made toward the stated goals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness since 1776. Abolishing slavery and extending the voting rights to all adults comes to mind, of course. And we look at some of the people who worked hard for these things and consider them as heroes for good reason. So fair enough. It is not like anyone walking around saying the world is a perfect place. So even if on the whole, and contrary to some of the trends I mentioned earlier, we are a lot better off in many ways than we were 500 years ago. So our social justice advocates want to contribute and continue this tradition. It is laudable that they do have some heroes and want to do something to make the world a better place. They could be endorsing nihilism and all overdose, so it could be worse. With the advantage of history books, we are able to ponder the social changes that have been achieved, and yes, sometimes with hard work, the world gets better. Who can blame the social justice advocates for having good intentions? Perhaps they think they will be written into the history books of the near future, alongside some of their heroes from the past 200 years. In all seriousness, perhaps they want to live on forever, as part of the bending of the arc of history toward justice. But here is the problem. It is not 1864, or even 1964 anymore. People already did the heavy lifting on this matter. Very few Americans are actually against the things the sign wielders are protesting these days. Note, also, that it is a serious problem that for social justice advocates, their intentions are often just not very clear. Some of their demands are not just low-hanging fruit on the tree of justice, but they are imaginary fruit. As if someone is actually claiming that they don't, we are subjected, nevertheless, daily, forced to read and to react emotionally to the charge that Black Lives Matter. So, yeah, they do. Now say something interesting. We're waiting. The lack of coherent arguments is made further suspicious by their insistence on urgency. The social justice advocates couldn't be more earnest that something must happen now. Not later, now. If I haven't already lost everyone yet for the crime of not taking everyone, everything, and everything they have ever said as the most serious matter anyone has ever spoken about, then let me reiterate two conclusions I've made in previous presentations. One, the social justice advocates are exaggerating the problems they address. And two, even if the problems they address were legitimate, then their proposed solutions, inasmuch as they make any such proposals, would only exacerbate the existing problems. The social justice causes are, if not complete phantoms of the imagination, like the idea of fascists running every organization in America, then they are laughable exaggerations of the most trivial matters, like banning phrases that superficially resemble actual racial slurs. Yet these are the meaning in life inducing ideas that our social justice warriors approach the day with. armed to do battle with anyone who continues to say the thing that we were all saying until yesterday. All but the most cynical of us know that America is a place of equal treatment under law, and that it bends over backwards to help out people from many different backgrounds. Equality is actually the law. What the social justice advocates are really asking for is not traditional equality. It's what we should be calling radical egalitarianism, or one, the idea that everyone is equal in every way, and two, moreover, that all outcomes should reflect this, and three, that we should probably enact some kind of revenge upon the groups of people who have had any kind of success in the past. If you listen carefully, you will hear them be using a word that sounds a lot like equality. It is equity. So, like the equivocation they use with so many terms, they want you to think that these terms are synonymous. But they are quite different, for equity means equality of outcomes for groups, regardless of the differences between them or of the individuals among the groups. They want us to believe that equity is equality 2.0. And we're all for equality, aren't we? Why, it almost sounds that it is the American way, and you would have to be unpatriotic to oppose equality and equity. While social justice advocates find few things more disgusting than patriotism, they seem to be motivated by a force of something like it, which produces a similar kind of meaning in life for Americans and others who are bereft of the urgent need, or are bereft of the idea of patriotism, yet full of the urgent need to be on the right side of history. The idea that we are all equal, however, is far older than the American Declaration of Independence. Many ancient religious traditions view all members of humanity as being equal with the same kind of divine spark of life running through their veins. And this predates Christianity, which wisely stressed the idea. With this connection to ancient or mystical ideas, radical egalitarianism can even seem like a spiritual path. Perhaps it should receive the same level of social acceptance we are told to afford religious adherents on their similar paths. After all, those of us who are religious can certainly understand a commitment to doing God's work while here on earth. And who are we to tell them just how and where to express their most deeply held convictions? In all seriousness, what if the majority of the social justice advocates actually believe they are ushering in a new era of peace and justice and kindness and kittens? Something like the kingdom of God that the Christians sometimes discuss. By definition, or at least in theory, no goal can be higher. Perhaps our social justice advocates are actually getting a sense of religious ecstasy when they topple statues. And, like most religious traditions, social justice theories offer certainty. Everyone likes to point to science, to cite anything that remotely supports their biases. Social justice, however, claims, and mistakenly, to be a theory and not just a hypothesis. And theories sound like science. It's hard to blame them. Everyone has a low tolerance for uncertainty and moves in the direction of bias confirmation and reducing their own cognitive dissonance. Life is hard to figure out, and it's easy to go with those who tell you that they know the truth, and you can too. As well, social justice emerges from American universities, in which there is some actual science going on, and sometimes in the same buildings as all of the social justice teacher/activists and their hypotheses. So if you want to carry around a few names of self-described experts and misquote them, social justice can provide people with actual PhDs after their names in your quest for smug certainty. In addition to that, the academic social justice activists have developed their own jargon in the form of long or confusing words with which they will describe their latest social justice hypotheses. This is similar to an argument with a seminary student who is ready to discuss the nonsense of the ontological argument while you have no idea what that word even means. Oh, and you shouldn't be wasting your time finding out in the case of ontological arguments, in case you are taking notes here. I'd like to stress that the overwhelming majority of social justice advocates really, truly believe they are doing the right thing and they're executing the most compelling moral actions imaginable, given what they feel. My point is larger than that. Except for a few bad actors who deliberately engage in lies, most true believers in anything are good people trying to do the right thing during their time on this planet. I mean true believers of anything, be it traditional religion or a substitute. Here's where the analogies break down again. For, as in the case of Enlightenment philosophy, the social justice advocates absolutely abhor religion as well. In fact, they consider it an unjust manifestation of power. Did I say that? I meant manifestation of power. Well, social justice theories are much more like the disastrous aspects of religion, or what happens with most cults. For example, while I suggested that their desire for a world embracing equality was similar to some religious views, we must note that social justice theories preach a profound divisiveness as somehow the path to a road to justice. Social justice theories are balkanizing, even atomizing, using ever smaller groups of networks and grievances rather than appealing to our shared humanity. Sometimes religion goes in this direction as well. It is like the strange fact that Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do," while dying on the cross, yet Christians have been blaming the Jews for killing Christ and exacting a penalty upon them ever since. Just today, a social justice infected teachers union boss derided the Jews as being part of the so-called ownership class and therefore part of the problem. We know where this leads. In the most stark contrast to religious traditions, social justice theories and practice appear to show no signs of appreciation or gratitude in life. They don't want to retain the things that are going well. They want to tear everything down and start over. Somehow, they seem to think, the good things we have will survive under their pile of rubble. And religious traditions have a system in place for dealing with sin. It's called forgiveness. People get a second and third chance, etc., thankfully, as no one is perfect and will make mistakes. But as it stands now, forgiveness is completely absent from social justice theories and practice, as people, living and dead, are canceled from every form of social participation that the believers can exact from them. It is a gleeful public shaming and without recourse. We know where this leads as well. So what can be done? Try to speak with the social justice advocate, and one-on-one is best. encourage them to be specific about what they want. Try asking next level leading questions like, what do you mean by that? Or what led you to be interested in this? And listen and remember what the person says, rather than just jumping down their throats with a reaction you've heard someone else use. No, actually, listen, think about it, repeat it to them. And then tell them if you find one of their ideas interesting or even partially correct, or even on the road to being on something that is more like being correct. And this is not a tactic to throw them off. This is just being honest. And it might be the beginning of trust between the two of you. I'm saying you could be the facilitator of honest conversation with these people. Think about the seldom used meaning of the term intercourse as engaging with shared thoughts. And try to view the interchange or exchange as a positive learning experience for the both of you, rather than an argument with a winner and a loser. Specifically, see if you can guide a discussion away from demands from either one of you and toward requests. Only then may you be able to open a space to express your interests and requests as well. And the two of you can find something to, one, at least understand in each other, and two, perhaps agree upon and move forward with. So thank you for your time and attention, and you will find more presentations from this channel are in the works.